members to meet safely in person and presents imminent risk to the health of the attendees. Therefore, no physical meeting location will be available. To access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device. Presents imminent risk to the health of the attendees. Therefore, no physical
Jackie Lou looks hella mad.
available. To access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device. Presents imminent risk to the health of the attendees. Therefore, okay. Good. So it did that. Repeat function again. To access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using the URL listed on the agenda or on the PAB website. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on Rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen to join by phone, dial the number on the agenda and at the PAB website and enter the meeting code ID number that is there. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, please press *9 and wait to be recognized. Great. Shall we do a roll call?
Yes, we shall.
Great.
Board Member Calavita? Here. Board Member Chang?
Here.
Board Member Lefwich?
Here.
Board Member Levine? Board Member Levine, you're muted.
Sorry, here.
Board Member Mizell, I don't see him. Board Member Moore. Board Member Owens.
Here.
Board Member Ramsey. I see you. We can't hear. Okay, there you go. Board Member Ramsey, it looked like you unmuted yourself, but we can't hear you. I can't hear you. Can anybody else hear him?
No.
No.
We'll come back to you, or just say something when you think we could hear you. And Board Member Batista.
Here.
Okay, and for the public's information, Ms. Batista is here for Board Member Harris, who's absent today. She has an excused absence, and Ms. Batista is our alternate board member. Okay, we have
Ms.
quorum.
Lee, Ms. Lee, this is Izzy Ramsey. Sorry about that. I'm here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And we also have Sergeant Rittenhouse. And I want to make sure I don't get that. I'm sorry, Lieutenant Rittenhouse, and Chief Lewis is here, and
Officer
Valier, and City Attorney Sam Harvey is here as well.
Okay.
I'm missing anybody else?
Looks like Board Member Mizell just joined.
Great. Nice to see Vice Chair Mizell. Okay. So are there any questions about the agenda? I don't see or hear any questions of the agenda. Not seeing or hearing any such. Shall we just approve by unanimous consent, or do we need to do a motion?
You can approve by unanimous consent.
Okay, so approved, not hearing or seeing any objections. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak?
I see 2 raised hands.
Okay, so shall I share my screen for the stopwatch?
Sure, you do that, and I will allow Ms. Saganor to speak.
Great. Ms. Saganor, would you like to speak? We can't hear you right now. So is Ms. Saganor, is she on mute, or is there?
I just was able to unmute. There was a problem.
Okay.
I had a little problem getting there.
Great, sorry.
My comment this evening, among the important things on your agenda, many things on your agenda, is something related to the subcommittees and perhaps the creation of some new subcommittees. And I don't know if you yet have the process in place for the new process that will be put in place for members of the public to volunteer and be considered for appointment to subcommittees. I hope that you do get that in place soon. Among the committees that you're considering is to create a new committee for Lexipol policies. And that's one where I think, although the primary audience, of course, for the Lexipol policies is the police department, and of course your board itself. But there is also an audience for the public for those policies, and so I think that would be one that would be helpful to have a public member on it. And I'm actually interested in volunteering to be on that, but myself or somebody else would be great. So I'm hoping that process will be in place for the public to volunteer to be on subcommittees. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. This is my first Police Accountability Board meeting. Thanks for having it tonight. I've been doing a bit of accountability and openness with technology and data collection for local Bay Area cities over the past 7 years. It's nice to say hi. Boy, after all this time, I'm still pretty rusty at how to better talk about these things. So thanks for your patience at this time with myself. I wanted to first offer a real good luck to yourselves in how I think we're all trying to work towards the ideas of how the everyday public can be involved in the review process of police officers when they come to the Police Accountability Board when there's citizen complaints. It's been an important work that we've all been trying. I think a consensus of our whole community has been trying to work on for a while now. Good luck how that effort is going. I'm hoping it will be on the agenda tonight. And I hope by the end of the year, we can really be seeing clear how to be working on these things and agreeing for all sides. Good luck on these efforts. I secondly wanted to offer at the closed session report for the city council last week, I think it was, there was an issue with secure justice. There was a legal issue involved. And they work ideas of accountability with the future of technology and community. I just wanted to remind the importance of what good surveillance technology practices can do for a community, open public policies with technology. I think it really has to be included with the ideas of reimagine, health and human services, and racial equity issues. It's a great compliment. It really helps define our future and builds a future of shared relationships and not just government dictates, which is a really interesting concept for our future. I think we're defining a positive, sustainable future, and Berkeley's a bit slow and a bit behind in this work. It was mentioned Lexipol work, getting the community involved in defining Lexipol ideas. I hope the future of accountability with technology in the community really can be a group community effort, and we can have the same sort of subcommittee process that simply defines technology for our community and what its legal ramifications. And the public can have access to this sort of information. So good luck in these efforts tonight, what you'll be talking about. And we have a sustainable future that's really decent and hopeful. Good luck how we work towards it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other members of the public with their hand raised. Do you see?
Yes, Mr. Martino.
Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Martino.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, I just wanted to support and agree with what Kit Saganor had said, and repeat that I'm available to be on the subcommittee on the 351 ordinance. and am desirous of being on that subcommittee. And hope that Ms. Stagner will also be on it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. I'm trying to see if there is another member of the public who is interested in speaking. I don't see any on my end, but
I don't see any more raised hands, Chair.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Which I'm not sure how I do that. Oh.
I think on the lower right, does it say stop share? Should be a green button.
Interesting. Well, I don't see it actually.
Across the top, there should be a toolbar with a red button that says stop share.
There we go. Yeah, pause share, stop share. Great, thank you, Board Member Ramsey, with lots of experience in this. Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Approval of minutes. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes?
So I wasn't here last time, so should I just abstain?
Sure, Director Lee is nodding her head. Good idea.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Great. Great. Moved by Board Member Leftwich, seconded by Board Member Calavita. Any objections?
Well, let me take a roll call vote since we're going to have an extension.
Okay, good idea. Because there's an exemption, we're going to do roll call.
Calavita,
Yes.
Chang,
Yes.
Leftwich,
Yes.
Levine,
Yes.
Mizell,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Owens,
Yes.
Ramsey,
Yes.
Batista.
I'm here, but is this for the votes?
Yeah,
Oh, abstain.
thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Chair, you have
Your point of privilege, can we mute the attendees, please?
you got a couple of public members that are still on the panel that need to be removed from the panel.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thanks for the reminder, Board Member Owens and Vice Chair Mizell. Okay, so have we gone through the entire roster here? I believe so, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so there's no objections. The minutes are approved. And we'll move into the next agenda item, Chair's report. I really don't have anything to report at this time. With the intent of saving time, I'm going to shift forward to update from Board Member Calavita and update from Board Member Mizell.
I don't have anything new on the police chief search because we haven't had a meeting since our last meeting. So I'll speak to that next time.
Thank you. Vice Chair Mizell.
Nothing new, Chair. Still waiting for the March 10th meeting with council to present our response to Nick Jr. report, and the Nick Jr. report will also be presented at that city council work session, I should say.
Great, thank you. I guess I could say one quick thing, which will be raised during question and answer. At least I will ask about it of the chief after the chief of police report. Last weekend there was an incident where it was reported in Berkeley side, hundreds of flyers were distributed across North Berkeley in Susan Wengraff's district of an anti-Semitic nature. And I spoke to Susan Wengraff, who is my council member. She reported that the Berkeley Police Department, including the chief, of course, were very responsive, responding to this incident. And there are numerous calls into the department, and I want to just commend them for their quick response. And working with Susan Wengraff, who also worked with the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, in terms of the best way to respond to this. And that the police department as well put out a announcement regarding this incident. So thanks again, and thanks for your professionalism and quick response to that. And without any other further commentary, we'll move to Director of Police's Accountability Board's report. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. We have had no new complaints filed since the last meeting. We had findings, staff presented findings and recommendations in the latest case, just in a special meeting, closed session, just ahead of this meeting, supporting all of the staff's recommendation of unfounded on 3 allegations, so there'll be no hearing in that case. We need to get training up and running again. So I have scheduled with Captain, excuse me, with Captain Okies for your second meeting in March. And the topic just flew out of my head, but there will be a training scheduled for that meeting in 4 weeks. A reminder to do ride-alongs and sit-alongs if you have not yet done so. The contact person remains Lieutenant Dan Montgomery. If you don't, well, his email address is dmontgomery@cityofberkeley.info. If you need his phone number, you can always ask me. So do schedule those with him. He can tailor the ride-alongs to a particular time of day of the week, or beat. And bike-alongs are also available if you would like to get exercise and bike alongside our bike patrol. And I will also be broaching the idea of doing a hands-on use of force training. Wanted to draw your attention to the policy 351 materials in your packet, because I think that provides a lot of useful, it's not on the agenda, but you talked about it at your last meeting, and it provides a lot of the useful background about where that all came from. And I finally figured out that it started with a referral from Councilmember Taplin in October of last year. It was referred to the budget process, and in the budget process in December, the funds were approved for that. So that explains how that December 14th date got into the memo that we received from the city manager accompanying the use policy, because at first it wasn't really evident, but after doing some digging down, I managed to figure out how all that fit together. And that is actually it for me tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Director Lee. Next, we move on to Chief of Police's report with Chief Lewis.
Good evening. A couple of things I wanted to cover. First, last night we were due to present to council, or provided council, 2 information reports. One was the Fair and Impartial Policing Quarterly Update. The other was a 2021 year-end crime and collision data summary. Both those items were not heard last night. Were actually continued to the action calendar for the March 8th council meeting. So I wanted to share that. At that meeting, we'll provide both that update and that data. Both of those materials you should have received already through Director Lee. If for some reason you don't have them or need me to send them again, please let me know. And I just do want to share that as soon as those documents were through my review process, which includes a review from the city manager's office, those items were shared with you guys, so you had them as soon as possible. I wanted to also share, there's 2 other things coming your way this week from me. One is the most updated draft of what we call the early warning system, what's also referred to as the early intervention system in the FIP materials. I hope to have that to you by the end of the week. And then there's something much larger coming to you this week by the end of the week. And that is, as you know, in May of last year, the Police Equipment and Community Safety Ordinance was passed. With that, there's a pretty big lift year one. There's for a specified list of police equipment. There's an impact statement for each of those types of equipment that has a laundry list of things that get reported on in that. There's also corresponding use policies for those pieces of equipment. And then, so what you're going to be receiving this week is a 60+ page document that's all the impact statements. And then there'll be also all the supporting use policies that go with that. And then we are due to return that. So there's a 90-day period that PAB has to look at that, review that, make recommendations on that. They go to council. And then we are due by that May 1-year mark. The department is due to return to council with those documents and the uses of those equipment over the past year. And just to kind of clarify the use piece, after year one, the annual use reporting is on, I believe it's March 15th each year. So we won't be done with the actual use piece, the reporting piece, until March 15th of this year. So you won't get that this week, but you will get the impact statements and the use policies at the end of the week. And then once we get the actual use piece done, I'll be sharing that as well. Let's see. I did want to share some information about a couple cases over the course of the last couple of weeks. Two pretty significant sexual assault or sexually involved cases. One was we did arrest a man in Ohlone Park who had chased women on 2 separate occasions at least. And yeah, in one of those situations, he actually threatened to rape the woman. And our bike officers were able to quickly respond to Ohlone Park and detain that individual. The other incident, which you might have also seen in the news, was on February 16th. We received some reports that there was a vehicle circling around an elementary school on Ellsworth. And according to school officials, that vehicle had come around the block at least 10 times. Officers again responded to that scene. We got some information from our school resource officer who had an awareness around a similar event that had happened at Sylvia Mendez Elementary School in January. Our bike officers, again, were very quick on the scene and were able to apprehend a man and arrest him for numerous counts of annoying and molesting a minor, as well as engaging in lewd conduct, and found some incriminating evidence in his vehicle. So 2 pretty significant cases for our community, both resulting in arrests by our bike force team and good investigative work by our officers. And then Chair Chang brought up the hate incident that occurred over the weekend. Again, this was an incredibly disturbing situation for our community. And we thought it was very important to work with council on a joint statement, a city statement about sort of our very clear messaging about our stance against hate and really recognizing the impact that these incidents had. We're not alone in being victimized in this way in our city. There's been several local jurisdictions that have had the same incident with the same exact language in the notes, clearly organized, and working on collecting evidence around that, asked neighbors to provide video evidence if they had. But it's pretty clear that it's likely connected to the same group whose leader is a Greater Bay Area resident. And, this is in line with what we've seen in an increase in hate crimes in our city and nationally. And we continue to work on our efforts in the mayor's hate crime item. And I know that the PAB has some pieces of that, and board or Chair Chang has assisted us with an educational video, and we're going to continue our efforts in that as well. That's all I had to share today. Happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you. Other questions for the chief? I had a quick follow-up question, and it's not agendized, and we've talked about it a couple of times now already. With regard to the incident of the flyers, the hate incident, the anti-Semitic flyers that were dropped off, how does the police role with the mayor's hate crimes task force? How does that engage with investigations of this sort? I know it's fairly recent, but but is it more of a public engagement, or is there a tracking function that is thus triggered with this type of event, or is there any other type of informal or formal process when such incidents occur?
Yeah, one of the goals of that task force was to look and explore ways to have a more publicly available resource of information about incidents that occur and statistics and data, as well as services surrounding these issues. And this is certainly one of those things where the more we communicate with other jurisdictions and understand, what they're experiencing, we're able to address it, especially if things transition from a hate incident to a hate crime. We want to be prepared to work with our neighboring partners and the community as a whole to address those issues.
And really quickly as well, are other law enforcement agencies involved when this type of thing is triggered? Is it something that the BPD would make a determination of whether or not they want to form, say, a national law enforcement agency? Or is it something that goes through another process?
Yeah, and that's exactly the function of the NICREC reporting in many cases, is sharing that kind of regional terrorist activity or pre-terrorist activity like this, in that we're able to share with other jurisdictions about what they're observing. And like I said, especially as if they at any point transitioned into criminal acts or threats of criminal acts, we'd be in a position to share information, and especially about when they're unified or concerted or organized events like this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your efforts. And again, I want to reiterate that I spoke to Susan Wengraf, my Councilman She spoke highly of both your individual responsiveness and the police department as well. Are there any other questions or comments for the chief? I don't see any hands up. Thank you, Chief Lewis. And I guess we'll move on to the subcommittee reports. Does the fair and impartial policing implementation folks want to give an update?
Yes, our next meeting is, the agenda says February 22nd, but that was left over, I guess, from last meeting. Our next meeting is March 2nd. And we've been meeting and discussing how to increase collaboration between the department and our subcommittee on fair and impartial policing implementation. And I'm happy to hear Chief Lewis say that the EIS draft will be provided soon. So that's exciting. I'm happy to hear that. And yeah, that's my report.
Thank you. Very helpful. And Director Search Committee?
I suggest we defer this to item 10A because I added that to the agenda and it's duplicative.
Okay. Director Lee, do we need to, with the modification of the agenda, do we need to do anything else?
Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I think you're muted.
No, there's no need to formally take any action.
Great, thank you. And moving on to regulations. Oh, that's us. So we did meet already on February 22nd. We're meeting on the 10th. We have, as I stated at the last public meeting, general meeting, we went through very closely the entire set of regs, and then now we're going back through them again. So we're in the process of going through a second time again, very closely as well. So, I am hopeful that with the March 10th meeting, we'll have gone through a good portion of the regs again. And it is likely, though, we might need at least one other meeting after the 10th to be solid on all the various language changes and questions that we have. Thank you. And any other member of the Regulations Committee, would you like to make any commentary? Just let me know. I'm seeing shaking. Okay, great. How about the Mental Health Response Committee?
Well, as you remember at the last meeting, we were prioritizing some of the subcommittee work and decided this could essentially not be up front and center due to time constraints. However, the public member and I had a conversation about this, and we're both interested in starting to gather some of the policies and written materials that are relevant to our understanding of the current status quo on mental health response. So, Director Lee, I haven't asked for anything from you yet, but that is, you're one of the people I was hoping could help direct me correctly. Thank you. That's all.
Great, thank you. Let's go to policy 351, fixed surveillance cameras.
Chair, this subcommittee was formed at the last meeting, but no members were appointed.
That's right.
I want to acknowledge the request from one of the members of the public to be appointed. And my recommendation to you is to hold off on appointing any public members at this time. I did forget to report that your standing rules are set to be ratified by the council at their March 8th meeting. And you should all recall that one of the changes that the mayor had suggested was to do a fully open process to gather names and create a pool of members of the public who are interested in serving on subcommittees. So my recommendation is that you hold off until we've created that pool, but that you could appoint members of the board to the committee and to the subcommittee tonight. And any interested members of the public are, of course, free to attend the meetings.
Okay, I think that's a good recommendation. Is that something that I can just accept as chair as a recommendation with regard to the public members, or do we need to go through any other process?
Since you're the chair, the chair makes the appointments. I think you can go ahead and accept that.
Okay, so exercising my discretion, I do accept the director's recommendation with regard to public members to wait for after the March 8th city council determination. And can you remind me, Director Lee, of, I know you told me before and I've forgotten, of the board members who volunteered or voluntold. I think they volunteered for the committee.
I'm not sure there were any, and if there were, I don't have a record of that.
Oh, okay. So for some reason I have a vague recollection that some had volunteered themselves. So who are members of the board who would like to be part of this committee? It's an important committee, fixed surveillance cameras. Obviously it triggers a lot of important policing issues and privacy issues that previously we had talked about in a prior meeting. It's an important committee. Some interesting issues there that are, on one hand, some of them are constitutional as well as law enforcement based too. Hello? It sounded like an echo there for a minute. I see board member Calaviter has her hand raised.
I was wondering from Director Lee, is there, what is the time frame? What is a reasonable time frame for this?
Yeah, question.
Well, that's an excellent question. This was not formally referred to you. This is something you wanted to take up, which I agree.
Yes.
Rightfully so. So I would just say as soon as the subcommittee is able, maybe is a month realistic?
I'm very interested, but I'm overloaded on committees and I don't want to take it up until the regulation subcommittee is finished.
Well, I don't think regulations is going to be done for, I
Yeah.
mean, and even after regulations is done, there'll be further meetings with the full board on that topic.
Yeah.
So yes, you're on regulations and fair and impartial, so that's,
That's pretty heavy. So I'm going to hold off.
Okay. Thank you. Are there others who would like to? I do see board member Leftwich's hand up.
Right. I had the same question about the timing because I'm on the regulations subcommittee, and then I'm also very interested in working on the Lexipol subcommittee once that's formed. And those are both very heavy duty subcommittees. So even though I'm interested in the topic, I don't think I could take it on in the immediate future either, depending on when Lexipol is going to resume.
Okay.
My advice would be that you probably, that you could, Lexipol's been on hold for so long that it could probably stay on hold for a little longer and take care of 351, simply because that one is, very timely right now.
Okay. Well, I'm not willing to chair the subcommittee, but I would serve on it once regulations is over.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. So, and I see board member Moore has his hand raised.
Yes, I'd be willing to serve on the subcommittee.
Thank you, board member Moore. That's much appreciated. We do need, for the subcommittee to properly function, there are some, such as board member Leftwich and Calavita, who routinely volunteer. We do need some more folks on that subcommittee. I do see board member Ramsey has his hand raised.
Yeah, I can volunteer for that, assuming that Lexipol is going to be put off for a little bit.
Great, that'll be a good team. Board member Ramsey has also volunteered. So that's 2 folks, and with 2 coming on potentially after the regs have been and other in the Lexipol have gotten off the ground or been completed. Is there a third person who would like to volunteer if they have the time? So thus far we have 2 Director Lee. What?
That's enough.
Okay. Great. So we have board member Ramsey and Moore thus far, and then potentially Leftwich and Calavita. Okay. Okay. So unless there's any other conversation necessary here, we can move on to item number 9 with old business. With regard to 9A, revision of policy 425 body worn cameras. To broaden access by PAB and ODPA.
Remember, well, you have a couple hands raised. I don't know if they're left over, but I know that remember Leftwich has her hand raised and she did submit something, and I'm prepared to share screen if that's
Sure.
what a hand is raised for.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think board member Ramsey, is your hand raised from before, or are you ready to raise an issue with the BWC?
That was from before, it's our lawyer.
Okay, thank you. So board member Leftwich and then Director Lee will be bringing something up on the screen here.
Yeah, and she had forwarded the email. So board member Mizell had made some initial edits just to update, get rid of the references to the PRC, make it the PAB. And those changes are in 425.18.1.
Are you seeing the policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in addition to just updating the terminology and references to the entities, my suggested edits were to extend the body worn camera footage. I've got that A with the two subheadings to a 1 and a 2 to extend the access to PAB members during the DPA's presentation of investigative findings and disciplinary recommendations, like we did tonight. We watched the footage. And then secondly, to PAB members and complainants before and during a complaint hearing. I thought it was important that complainants had access to the body worn camera footage. And now that I'm looking at it tonight, I had raised the possibility of us having access to the footage even before the DPA's presentation of investigative findings and recommendations. So perhaps we should add the words PAB members before and during, assuming, because that seemed like that was agreeable.
Okay.
So those were my suggestions.
I'll put it in here for purposes of discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that before was raised a number of times for efficiency purposes, so that some members can review if they have the opportunity prior to the presentation. And of course, it doesn't mean to the exclusion of being shown during the presentation.
Right.
So can folks take a look at this language and what do you think?
The other point is that Board Member Mizell had deleted some language that was in the prior policy, which I put back in, and then I have the note about whether or not why that was removed. So the initial policy referred to access except, I'm trying to look at the crossouts, where the evidence files are available and are not part of any ongoing criminal investigation. So Board Member Mizell had deleted that and just put in furtherance of its duties. And I put it back just because I thought we ought to discuss it because that seemed substantive, and I can see why the department might not want to release footage if it's being used in part of an ongoing criminal investigation. But that's something just to discuss. I don't know what other I don't know that much about it, but it seemed kind of significant to delete.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
as to that last revision by Board Member Lethwich, I would like to have, not this second, but that's something I'd like to have a discussion with the police department about the pros and cons of releasing things while they're ongoing criminal investigations.
Okay, with regard to in the furtherance of his duties, is that what you're referencing?
The first paragraph.
Right, right. I'm referencing Board Member Lethwich's comment here.
Okay. Thanks. What are thoughts on that? And let me make sure. I think Board Member Owens has her hand up. Please respond first to what Director Lee is raising, and then Vice Chair Mizell has his hand up as well.
Oh, I'm reading that to say that we'll be granted the files as long as they're not part of an ongoing criminal investigation.
Right.
So I'm unsure of why that may or may not be an issue, because we're saying if it's not part of a criminal investigation, then we should be granted the files, granted access. If
right.
they are,
well, that's the way the policy was before, but Board Member Mizell had taken that out, and I see he's got his hands up, so he can speak to that. And so I just put it back in because I thought there were probably reasons why the department might not want to release footage if there's an ongoing criminal investigation.
But this says that they won't if there's an ongoing criminal investigation.
Right, but that was deleted.
But it's back in. So my question was to Director Lee, why, if what it says is we don't get access if there's an ongoing criminal investigation, my question to Director Lee is, why does she feel that there needs to be a discussion with the police department Because it's not saying that we have access if there's a criminal investigation. It says we don't have access if there's a criminal investigation.
Right, and there might be situations where I would like access, even if there's a criminal investigation.
Okay.
So I would like to hear from the department their rationale, so.
Okay, I understand, thank you.
So, and that's interesting. It's, there's some analogs. I want to make sure Vice Chair Mizell can speak, but just real quick, there are some analogs with Freedom of Information Act requests at the state and federal level, where there are certain exemptions, but it's at the discretion of the FOIA coordinator as to whether, and there's certain factors there. I'm not a FOIA expert, but certain factors there where, for example, you would not provide the requested information during for the purpose of protecting an enforcement during an investigation. But it's not a blanket rule, though. So that there's a kind of an analog there that we might want to think about with that regard, particularly where this is going to the PAB, where we may be conducting an investigation. Vice Chair Mizell and then Board Member Calavita.
Yes, first let me, I guess apologize to the board. I did not intend to make substantive changes, and obviously if I had realized I did, I would have mentioned it. However, if I did, I am certainly in favor of us having full access. I don't think for the purposes of the Freedom of Information Act or the California Public Records Act, we're a party in that in this case, being as we have obviously special privileges in terms of our access to documentation video from the department. So I don't think that applies here. And in my reading, again, I don't have, all of California law in front of me, but from my reading of the Charter Amendment, in theory, we already have access to things during criminal investigations. This policy, I think as written, wouldn't give us that access, but we could subpoena for access to those things. And I think it would be difficult, again, unless there's a California law, which I'm not aware of, which would apply to us. I don't think the department would be able to say otherwise. So for one, I'll just say I'm in favor of us having access during a criminal investigation, obviously, as we need it. And I guess number two, if that, I guess, is an issue of contention here in this policy, I guess I'd want us to do a review of the law, but my thoughts would be we already have that access through our subpoena power anyway, and this may just be a process describing how we review complaints, and that if there was some exceptional situation, as far as I believe, we still have access to it. We would just have to use that power. So I don't know if that clears anything up or makes it more complex, but
no, that's helpful, Vice Chair. I think that using the FOIA as an analog is not meant to be a direct analogy, but as you flagged, is that with FOIA, it's a member of the public requesting from a government agency information, and the rationale for the exemption for this releasing information during an enforcement proceeding is that could then hamper the enforcement proceeding. But obviously, we're not the public, we're the PAB, which is an independent police commission, and not getting that information could hamper our ability to conduct an investigation thoroughly and transparently, as I think Director Lee is flagging here. So this might require further conversation with the department, but from the position that we do have a role as an independent police review authority, a commission, to have access to information that's necessary to make those determinations. And then we have Board Member Calavita and Board Member Levine.
So I'm wondering if there's anybody from the department who can address this now here with us tonight.
Lieutenant Rittenhouse, is he still here?
Is Lieutenant Rittenhouse here?
Let's see here. He is here.
I am here. I'm not necessarily prepared to address it, but I think the understanding is what they're trying to protect is the underlying criminal investigation and or any victims or confidential informants that may be captured on those videos. So I'm by no means no expert in it, but I believe protecting the criminal investigation at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to have a follow-up comment, and that is, I thought that when there is an ongoing criminal investigation, there's tolling until that's complete. Is that not correct?
No, when there's tolling for the time to file by a complainant who is the subject of criminal proceedings related to the incident that he or she wants to file about. And then there's also tolling of an investigation if either the complainant or the subject officer is a subject of criminal proceedings related to the incident.
Right. So you don't proceed until those things are complete. Is that correct?
Correct. But just because there's a criminal investigation pending doesn't mean that, so it's narrower than just a criminal investigation. There have to be criminal proceedings with that the complainant or the subject officer, depending on which section of the regs you're looking at, have to be involved in.
Let's see. And what is your argument for keeping that, for not having that in there? I want to hear your argument again.
For not having that in there?
You said that there's some times that we would want to see the body worn camera footage, even if there's a pending criminal investigation.
Right. For instance, currently in your 2 death investigations, we're not being allowed access to that body worn camera video.
I see.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good analogy. So, okay. Thank you. And Board Member Levine?
Yeah, the reason I'm concerned about leaving it in is that even if there were no objection, but there is a pending criminal investigation, it precludes by this language our having access to the body worn footage.
Right.
See, it says,
yeah,
are not part of any ongoing criminal investigation. You know, some of us take these words very literally and therefore would say, well, we can't get it because there's a criminal investigation. And what if it's a tangential one? What if it's not one of these ones that implicate tolling? What if it's not a criminal investigation involving the complainant? So I think that the language has to take into account that there are a multitude of possibilities, and I think essentially I'm supporting what Director Lee is saying, but even if the police objected, there has to be a way that we can make this a more flexible preclusion so that we can have it with the protections, for example, as Lieutenant Rittenhouse says, to protect confidential informants, not to release it from the confidential hearings we have on police complaints. No public member shall, be permitted to view, blah, blah, blah. I'll leave it to the language as experts, but this precludes too much.
Too broadly drafted thus far.
Yes.
Thank you. And then so Ms. Batista and then Director Lee.
Yes, I just wanted to echo the concerns of Vice Chair Mazel and other folks on the lack of transparency. I mean, even to review the case we did earlier, we had to agree to confidentiality. So I'm just not sure why it would preclude us, why we can't have access to this information, even if there's an ongoing criminal investigation. I mean, it just feels like it's part of the mission of this board, but not just accountability of police, but transparency is important too. I'm thinking immediately of a couple cases that were in the news. And, it takes a lot of times, those investigations could take years to be resolved. And I think it is important that PAB has access to that information. And
yeah, that's a good point. It could take, as you described, Ms. Batista, years. And, what would that mean? Director Lee has her hand up too. What would that mean, Director Lee, in terms of, would there be a tolling? Sometimes it's not told, right? And then we wouldn't have access to important evidence.
I mean, my earlier comment had to do with the fact that not all criminal investigations, you wouldn't invoke tolling just because there's a criminal investigation. You invoke tolling under those specific circumstances that are set out in the regulations. But I raised my hand because I want to agree with Board Member Meisel's point about the board and this staff having broad access to information. But I also want to sort of second what Board Member Levine has said, that we need to be flexible. And I think, and the reason that I want to have a conversation with the department is, what are the concerns and how can those be addressed? So I don't think there should be a blanket rule against us getting access to footage when there is an ongoing criminal investigation. But I want to hear, what are the concerns? And are there ways that can be addressed without compromising the police department's work in an ongoing investigation?
So I'm comfortable with you going back and speaking to them on those specific parameters based upon the conversation here. I just want to make sure Vice Chair Meisel, do you still have your hand up from before, or did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll be brief, Chair. I guess I was seconding on my point. Now rereading to the extent I can, and thank you, Ms. Lee, and I think for this help, this guide here. I'm rereading this and the charter amendment. I see no reason why we should be prevented from access, really at any time. Obviously, we should use all of our power judiciously, but I don't see any reason we should be prevented.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to, and Director Lee will have this conversation with the department, get their rationale, but with regard to questions about confidentiality, of course, the PAB also has confidentiality practices as well. There's no assumption that just because we get information such as the body-worn camera footage, that we wouldn't maintain confidentiality as required. So thank you. So is that do we need to do a motion for that, or is that?
Can I?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Board Member Leftwich has her hand up also.
Yeah, well, I was going to suggest that for purposes of discussion with the department, that we change the language to go back to what Board Member Meisel had, even though maybe he didn't mean to make that change at the time, so that it would say, that first paragraph would say, investigating a specific complaint where BWC evidence files are available in furtherance of its duties, or their duties, in furtherance of their duties.
In furtherance of their duties. Okay.
And then see what the department says, and they'll see these other changes at the same time. We can get their feedback about the other changes.
So, but just a quick question, Board Member Levine, to you, is that properly, the scope of it is properly scaled there?
I think that Board Member Leftwich's suggestion is very good, because I think that we're looking for broad powers, and we need to hear if there's any objection, because maybe there isn't. It occurred to me too that there might be a way to give the police department some comfort that we take our duty of confidentiality very seriously by having some consequence if there's a breach of it. I'm not opposed to that, because, you know, I take my oath of responsibility very seriously and won't breach it. So, and I believe we all probably have a similar commitment. So I wouldn't be opposed to some teeth in it if that made them feel more comfortable.
Director Lee, what are there any type of set of disciplinary outcomes for a breach of confidentiality by a PAB member?
There's no, well, there's no discipline because you're not employees.
Right.
I'm looking at the charter now. I think there's some language about
regulations might have something too. I seem to, I think our regulations had some.
If I directly, I know there's that document we signed that explicitly goes over the potential for criminal prosecution if we were to disclose this information. That much I remember very clearly. So
okay. I mean, it puts you on notice of things that can happen. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought there was something about eligibility.
But termination, you know, maybe you're
right.
terminated.
That's what
yeah,
I'm thinking of.
probably that too.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Okay,
I'm
that's a good
taking
reminder.
my oath of confidentiality very seriously and plan to shred all the documents you all mailed me for this.
Yes.
Yes, that's it. Exactly.
Do that.
Like Ms. Batista, we that's an important requirement that we have in destroying that material. Okay, so we have aired that there are some kind of consequences with regard to confidentiality. Board Member Calavita and Board Member Leftwich.
Yes, so in light of this conversation, and we're putting back in that, or deleting that part about except when there's an ongoing criminal investigation, then I would think that we would have a problem allowing complainants to see the footage because they don't have the same oath of confidentiality as we do.
Well, I think that would be one of the sort of the nuances that we would need to work out. Like it's not either or, and it's not in all situations. It could be different depending on the kind of criminal investigation. So there's a lot we go through. Sorry.
Is that something that's could be put into the policy here? I mean, that's.
I don't know if we want to put it in the policy because, I mean, if they'd be given access, it would be through the staff, right?
Yeah.
And I guess they could, maybe they could swear that they won't copy it or something. I would think it might be enough to do it in that context, but.
Well, I think Board Member Calavita's point was, should they have the same access? And I'm not sure about that. I think that's a really good question. And they're probably, in my view, and we're just talking theoretically, but to me, theoretically, you might have different rules for complainants. For anybody who's not DPA staff and not a police accountability board member.
Yeah.
So they're getting it just under 2 before and during a complaint hearing. So your point is that even that's too broad because potentially there could be an ongoing criminal investigation?
I think if there's an ongoing criminal investigation, that there need to be rules specific to that. Maybe that's just what I'm conceiving of at this point.
Okay. Yeah, that needs to be thought out a bit. And Board Member Ramsey, I think Board Member Calavita first had her hand up and then Board Member Ramsey.
Oh, I'm finished.
Okay, Board Member Ramsey.
Yes, I just have a small point about the additional language in furtherance of their duties. I think it makes sense to track the language of the charter amendment. And in paragraph 20 of the charter amendment, which says access to records of city departments, it just says materials and evidence, the board or its staff request, and it says for the purpose of carrying out its duties and functions. So I think it could be useful rather than saying in furtherance of their duties, just the exact language for the purpose of carrying out their duties and functions.
For the purpose of carrying out their duties and functions. What,
Yes.
should we just punch that in
But
there?
that is language from the charter. That's
Right.
the only reason I say that.
Yeah. So I think that's a good practice, as long as the charter is clear. You know, sometimes there's language there that may not be as clear as we wish. But on that regard, and with that regard, I think that's pretty clear language. It's was there. I'm sorry. Can you say it again, board member?
It says for the purpose of carrying out, it says it's, but I do agree with board member Leftwich, it should be there for the purpose of carrying out their duties and functions.
Their duties and functions. Okay. So, you know, it's kind of generally with regard to furtherance, but the more specific to the charter language where it is clear, I think that makes sense. Do other folks have any commentary on that change?
I like it. And the only other thing, before we completely leave this policy, I had flagged one other area. So if we're going to a vote or anything, I just wanted to raise one other issue.
Okay. And so right now we know that Director Lee is going to go back and talk to the police department about this aspect of it. And number two, also, we're going to have to think out a bit this issue of PAB members and complainants in particular, before and during complaint hearing, having access to the BWC. Obviously, you know, it is important to transparency for them to have access as well. But there are some concerns around confidentiality there. So shall we move on to the other issue that board member Leftwich would like to raise?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm not as sure about this one, but it has to do with retention requirements, which is section 425.15.
Okay.
And I would defer to staff because I'm not as up on all the deadlines, but I just wanted to be sure that these periods are consistent with our timelines. And I know they say like the third sentence, recordings of incidents involving use of force, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, well, they might not view it as a use of force. So maybe they would view it as a incident. I don't know. Again, I didn't think it through, but I just wanted to flag it just to be sure everyone was comfortable, because we might as well address it now.
Well,
Okay. So, yeah, someone had is that Director Lee?
Sorry. Yes, I thought I had resent that retention schedule that the chief had emailed me.
Yes, you have.
Was that different than this? I vaguely remember seeing that, but this is the
It's
policy.
more specific than this. So this says minimum of 60 days and everything on the retention schedule is more than that.
Well, shouldn't they be consistent?
It's not inconsistent. It says, this section says a minimum of 60 days. The retention schedule goes further than that. It requires, depending on the category, the duration of retention is 60 days or more. So it means so everything is a minimum of, it's all a minimum of 60 days.
Right, but does the retention schedule have the weight of a policy?
Well, I think that's a good question.
I don't have that, what you sent out directly in front of me, but what I recall was that it had additional language with regard to misdemeanors versus felonies. Am I misremembering?
I found it and you want me to share that?
Yes, please. And Board Member Ramsey, do you still have your hand up, or is that a new raising of the hand?
Sorry, I will lower it.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I lost it. Hang on, I'll get there.
So just a time check, we're at 8:11.
Sorry, my computer's not cooperating. Let me see.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Minimize it a little bit.
Okay, so there's more specificity in the sense that there's more categories here.
Right. Right.
It's only here is training would be retained for 60 days,
Right.
whereas everything else is beyond it.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not clear on the until manually deleted. What does that mean?
What I get, and maybe Lieutenant Rittenhouse can help us out here, is that there's some automatic purging, so that a file gets flagged in a certain category, and that when 2 years is up in a collision case, then it's deleted. These other cases, they never automatically are deleted, and somebody has to go in and specifically delete.
But is there a minimum or a floor for how long they must be kept for?
Well, the policy says 60 days.
60 days for everything, except for in these cases, there's additional timeframes.
Mhm.
Okay. Are there any questions about this?
Is 60 days adequate, Director Lee, for the purposes of our investigations?
It does seem kind of short.
But it says for personnel complaints, it's until it's manually
Right.
deleted. So my assumption
Right.
is until the complaint is, closed or in whatever fashion, that's when it would be eligible to be deleted.
So down there is until manually deleted, and then personnel/VSA is 3 years. What does VSA stand for?
I don't know what VSA is. I was looking down here. Whoops, sorry.
So are those aligned with each other, personnel/VSA and personnel complaint?
Well, no, because complaints till manually deleted.
Right. And then personnel/VSA, which I just don't know what that means.
Yeah, can we ask?
VSA is our voice stress analysis. So it's not a polygraph, but it's a tool we use when hiring and going through backgrounds. So it's a voice stress analyzer.
Okay.
Well, maybe if Director Lee is going to be conferring with the department about those other issues, you could raise this issue as well, as far as any discrepancy between the policy and this retention schedule and what weight this carries. Because my preference would be to have, my guess, but I don't know, is that the policy would govern, and that it might be nice to make sure they're consistent, but I don't know. So maybe you could ask them as well, because this isn't going to be finalized tonight.
Yeah, and so alignment between the policy and here, but also there's a concern about the 60 days as a floor, that seems too short.
Well, wait, but I think that whoever pointed out personnel complaint, I think it was Board Member Owens.
Yeah.
It is categorized as until manually deleted. So
what if they don't make the complaint within 60 days and it's already deleted?
Right. So maybe some more specificity with regard to what that means with until manually deleted.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's some minimum that applies there with regard to personnel complaints, period, until manually deleted.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a cost to retention? Because if it isn't an expensive thing, I would say in general, it's better to keep things longer.
And
I can attest that there is a significant cost to keep body-worn camera video.
thank you, Board Member Owens. And during the PRC conversation, there was a comment from the department, I don't remember who, that it is costly. But of course, the cost should not be the primary factor when you are trying to preserve evidence. So that is an important concern, and that could be something that if we feel that it really needs more time, I'm not saying that we're saying so right now, but if we don't feel that if it's 60 days, that's not enough, or there's not enough specificity to this manually deleted, that's something that a PAB should be able to have a conversation about with regard to budgeting for such.
But also say, especially when it can be so beneficial to the officer.
Right.
That body-worn camera footage, can be very exculpatory. So
that's right. It's not only for the complainant, it's also for the officer and the department. So, so is there do we need a motion here, or there's a suggestion that the Board Member Leftwich suggested that the Director Lee, if you could, in addition to the other conversation on this issue, have also raised this concern around retention, BWC/retention.
So what you would like me to do is to have the conversation with the department about regarding concerns around criminal investigations, access, and then also about the retention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is everyone in agreement?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think that requires a motion, right? Just want to make sure I'm understanding that. Okay, good.
Does anybody object to that?
Did anybody object to this? Hearing nor seeing no objections. Thank you, Director Lee. And so let's move on. It just time check is 8:19. So I'm assuming we're done with 9A. So we're going to move on to 9B, right? We're talking about the automated license plate readers. Review the PPT.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's in your, I hope you have your February 9th packet, because that's where these documents that I have to refer to are located, and I'll try to be quick here. So if you have your February 9th packet, on page 29 of that packet is the ALPR use policy, the automated license plate reader use policy for parking enforcement that was submitted by Council Member Harrison and that we endorsed at a prior meeting. It limits the use of ALPRs to parking enforcement, which is what it had been authorized to be acquired for, that technology. So that is the same item that we endorsed. Now on page 19 of that same packet from February 9th, there's an alternative proposed by Council Member Taplin. The gist of which, I mean, there are a couple of minor details, but the substantive items would allow for some expansion into criminal investigations beyond parking enforcement. And so if you'll turn to page 23, this is where the most substantive changes are. So at the top of page 23, under C1, there was under Council Member Harrison's proposal a very clear statement about how ALPR should not be used on private property absent a court order, subpoena, search warrant, etc. And that has been deleted by Councilmember Taplin in favor of a more vague statement: existing laws prohibiting trespassing and unlawful search and seizure shall be followed. in addition to that change, number 6 and 7 at the bottom of that page would expand the use of ALPRs to canvas, scan or canvas license plates in connection with any crime scene, etc. So that's something that had been rejected in Councilmember Harrison's proposed use policy, which limited ALPRs to parking enforcement. Similarly with the hit list item under number 7. There were a couple of changes that Councilmember Taplin made that are very minor. On that same page, 23, number 2, he's added pursuant to BPD General Order P26. And then on page 25, in the middle of the page, C, letter C, he's added pursuant to California Department, et cetera, and that's fine. But I would recommend that we continue to endorse what Councilmember Harrison had done, which limits ALPR to parking enforcement and rejects these expansions into criminal investigations. That would be my proposal. And if we want to be more specific and say these other more minor additions are fine, unnecessary, I would say, but fine. Or we can simply restate our approval of Councilmember Harrison's proposal.
Thank you, Board Member Calavita. That was very helpful and detailed. So the proposal that you're making is based upon a rationale that there should be a balance more in the direction here of privacy concerns. Is that my understanding?
Yes, privacy concerns in the case of that one paragraph. But more generally, there is a push among some members of council to expand the use of ALPRs beyond parking enforcement. And that's what this essentially is a foray into. And I would propose that we reject it.
Okay, on the basis of what we just described. And also previously when this went through the PRC, as you've in a prior meeting described very clearly, that was not our intent when we reviewed the information at that time.
Yes. All of which is fundamentally based on the fact that ALPRs were authorized for acquisition for parking enforcement.
Yeah. I know that Board Member Owens gave some really helpful insight into the way the devices are used too. And we talked about metadata, and that's a prevalent concern in society today with the capture of metadata by both private entities and also governmental entities. And there's an aspect of the concern that's specific to culture too. And in Berkeley, we want to, we're an independent board, but we also are representative of the public. And we have this concern in Berkeley where there's been a historic a history of protections for privacy rights, for example. So to me, that's the broader context here. And I personally agree with Board Member Calavita's position on this. It seems like an expansion of a tool that hasn't properly gone through vetting, and it concerns me. But I do want to hear from others, and we can decide whether or not we want to move in the direction that Board Member Calavita has suggested. Ms. Batista?
I'm just curious, as a District 3 resident who has experienced violent crime. I was mugged outside of walking home from the Ashby BART station, and that was never solved because, it was dark and the guy took off with my purse, into the night, and that's that. and super scary, and still, have some traumatic responses to that. But I'm curious, if Taplin is District 2, do we know where Ben Bartlett stands on this? I actually didn't think about texting him to find out. But I'm just wondering, because violent crime is definitely up, like in our neighborhood, in our street.
And that's an important concern to raise. Board Member Calavita, you were going to say something.
I was going to say that it's a very important concern, and across the country, a lot of research has been done on whether this kind of technology deters violent crime or solves it after the fact. And it's not at all definitive that it has any effect on reducing crime.
There's substantial pros and cons here. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the science is important to me too. So I really appreciate it. I mean, I just don't have much experience or knowledge as to this
No,
technology.
I don't either. All I know is the little bit of research I've done because of these issues that come up. And I don't know other council members what their position is. I know several of them are very concerned about this. And I think, to be honest, I think the wave is going the other way because people are concerned about crime and believe that we need to do something. Unfortunately, doing something in the absence of, sort of evidence-based criteria is not very effective, especially when there's privacy concerns. So, I know, I don't know what Councilmember Bartlett's perspective is. I know several others, but in any case, I don't think that that's probably, the basis for what our conclusion should be.
Okay, thank you. And we have Board Member Owens and then Board Member Moore.
I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of struggling with this one, primarily because I know that it could be a good tool for them to use to potentially solve crimes. I agree that I don't believe it's a deterrent, but it is a tool that could be used to place someone in a certain location, where crime occurs. I know some of our neighboring smaller cities actually have not the parking enforcement type, but ALPR readers into the major arteries coming in and out of their cities. And I know they've solved crimes using those tools. So, I understand the privacy issue. I totally get that. But like I said, I'm struggling because I know that it is a tool that can help solve some crimes. And I think it can be done with some level of, I'll say, restraint when it comes to privacy. So, like I said, I'm struggling with this one because I do know it could be a valuable tool.
Thank you. And so, I have a follow-up question with regard to that, Board Member Owens. I know you have some experience in this area with the technology. So it's they're automated license plate readers, and you had described some of the technology with regard to the main company that was producing this. That's apparently commonly used by certain police departments. And we talked a bit about how it could potentially be used to capture a broader range of information, data. So, are we talking about potentially some type of permissibility under narrowly tailored circumstances that would require some further drafting of proposed language? Is that what you're thinking?
So the way the technology works is it's basically just reading the license plate. And, it's sort of like when you drive through, across the bridge and Fast Track takes that picture. It's the same basic technology. It's taking a reflection off of your license plate. So it's not capturing faces or anything like that. It's really just reading your license plate. And it's just taking that data and putting it into a database. And then based on if you have access to another database, let's say, you use the state stolen system. And if there's a license plate in that state stolen system and you pull that same license plate into this system, you'll get a hit. And it'll tell you, hey, this is something that's in the state stolen system. And that's when you get an officer involved to check to make sure, to verify it's still in the state system, blah, 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 blah. So there's more to be done. So that's why I say, I struggle with the privacy issue because, as long as you restrict it, that it's only used, let's say, for example, it's the state stolen system. So if it's a vehicle in the state stolen system, you use it. And if it's a warrant and it's related to this vehicle, you use it. But you don't use the data for, tracking where this person was or that person was. So that's why I say I struggle with it, because I do see where there's a value in it.
So that the concern, yeah, and I agree with you. We're understanding this is a very kind of a classic question of providing tools for law enforcement under the rationale of public safety, which is a very important rationale. On the other hand, that as a tool, is that balanced out by the privacy concerns? And there's questions of scope here. So we, with regard to, like someone who is in the Department of Transportation and is not a BPD officer and pulls up something that is stolen, then they would not engage with anyone in there. And we understand that. But the data that's gathered by the traffic control folks, would that be then accessible under an exigency argument? And what would control the exigency arguments of the police department to then go through the metadata? And what type of rules would apply to determine when and where that should be permissible? So that's one of the questions. And it's not exactly the same, but it's a part of that spectrum with like the CCTV question. In a town like Berkeley, that CCTV cameras are in other towns. And there's a spectrum of issue here with regard to that technology. But so I have Board Member Moore, and then Ms. Batista, and then I think it was Vice Chair Mizell, and then Board Member Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to clarify for the board and all the participants that Ben Bartlett of District 3 is siding on the side of privacy, and that he would prefer no ALPRs within District 3. That being said, the concerns over geolocation and metadata for ALPRs are a concern. They have been used in the past on both federal and state levels here in California. And even though that we might have agreements on a municipal level with the technology, that doesn't mean that the information and the data isn't going to be funneled through or used on different platforms with different databases. It's big questions that need to be asked. And for these reasons, I side with Board Member Calvita. I believe that Councilmember Harrison's take on the ALPRs are the best for Berkeley and for the security and privacy of their citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Batista.
Thank you, Board Member Moore, for I was actually texting back and forth with Ben on this. I just had a question regarding the license plate readers. Would they, like another issue we've had are hit and runs of cyclists. Like in these instances, would the license plate readers help, or, are they being currently used to be able to track down the motorists of those incidents?
To my knowledge, they're not being currently used because there's no accepted use policy as of yet. I just want to reiterate that one of the things that concerns Councilmember Harrison, in addition to the privacy issues, is that we have a surveillance ordinance that requires that various surveillance technology be authorized for acquisition. And ALPRs were authorized strictly for parking enforcement and explicitly excluded criminal investigations in the authorization for their acquisition. And so it seems that this is kind of a function creep, that, you know, there should be discussion about whether or not, yes, this is why we wanted them to be acquired. In any case, I want to.
But we also use them for Amber Alerts, correct? So there are certain instances that we use license plate readers.
Well, you use license plates for that, but I don't think it's this particular technology.
Okay.
So yeah,
I mean,
I understand where you're.
maybe Councilmember Owens knows that. But anyway,
Yeah.
I just also wanted to say that we're going to have fixed cameras in Berkeley at least 10 different intersections. So we will have Councilmember Owens mentioned, the board member Owens mentioned the fixed cameras at some places, in some municipalities. We are going to have fixed cameras. So anyway.
No, I appreciate being educated on this issue. Thank you all.
Vice Chair Mizell, and then Board Member Ramsey, then Board Member Owens.
Yeah, so I think my colleagues have said it better than me, so I'll be brief. I agree with Board Member Calavita's position. I think the board should support Councilmember Harrison's version. To me, this policy speaks of function creep in the way that the original policy was never designed. Obviously, council has their role and ability to increase whatever function or design they like in the city, but I don't think that was the design in the first place. And if a whole new proposal is to come forward, to me, that's fine, but it should go through the surveillance technology policy and all of its prerequisites, not a small tweak that we could recommend tonight. I would say there's basically no data that shows that ALPRs are effective at preventing certainly any serious crime, are effective as deterrents. There's lots of data that they can, of course, collect tons of data faster than a human can. That is true. But its impact on crime, there's very little data on that and almost none that shows that it's effective. So I do hear, of course, the arguments as it being a tool and something that could help, but that argument could be used with literally any item in the history of policing that has been used as an excuse to expand policing technologies with no requisite benefit to the citizens or more requisite harms to communities of color and other marginalized communities, which we have seen with ALPRs as they've been used to track Muslim communities in New York. They have been implicated in many false positives, including one in, I believe it was in Oakland, of Oakland's privacy director, where the tracking was used to find a car that had been a hit, and lo and behold, he's not the person who was registered to the car, and now they have guns pointed at them. So I don't see it as viable based on the data. I see this as a function creep that was never designed with the original policy, and I would go with Councilmember Harrison's version. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think it's an important reflection that Vice Chair Mizell just raised, which is that the PAB serves a very different function than the City Council. City Council has legislative responsibilities. They're also elected, whereas the PAB goes through a different process. While we do go through the City Council with a nomination process, we are not elected officials, and we have a different role in that sense, and we're independent. So it's an important function that we play in terms of a, lack of a better term, a check and balances, so to speak. Board Member Ramsey. I'm sorry, Board Member Ramsey.
You're muted.
I apologize. Thanks. Just two things. One was just going to give a little tip on your controls, Mr. Chair. If you click on participants, it should give you a box that will allow you to control board board members raised hands and whatnot. And it'll also tell you what order people have raised their hands, and it moves people accordingly. Just for your information. My comment, though, about the policy itself is I think I fall somewhere, sort of a combination of board members, Mizell and Owens. I do, like board member Owens, see that there could be some use of ALPR as an investigative tool in specific cases. But my concern here is I do think that the policy is written was almost a use policy for parking enforcement use of ALPRs. There's even one section, it's at the bottom of page 22, that says an ALPR shall only be deployed and used for parking enforcement operations and parking occupancy analysis. That to me was sort of a threshold question that no one can use this but parking enforcement. And now it's this idea of how do you use the police departments, use broader the data. But I think the concern in parking enforcement collection of this data and use of the tools is, at least for me, the assumption was that they're driving around collecting data. So they're collecting an incredible amount of information on people's cars, where they're located, et cetera, and that has real privacy concerns. I would have much fewer private concerns if there was an authorization for ALPRs to individual criminal investigative units, and then they went through the process of kept creating a use policy that's specific to them so that they could actually discuss when those units should be allowed to deploy ALPRs. Perhaps if there's a specific crime scene or there's something related to a specific criminal investigation and it isn't really prospective, but really more retrospective or more reactive after there's a crime scene. That makes sense to me. So I guess I'm struggling with this also, but like I said, I could see a reason why police officers should be able to use an ALPR, but it does seem like it should be a different acquisition request and a different use policy should go to patrol units and investigative units as opposed to this one, which to me really was written for parking enforcement. So, given that, I tend to support Councilmember Harrison's proposal currently, but with the proviso that it seems like the police department should come back and ask for an acquisition or use of a specific license plate readers that are specific to, like I said, patrol or investigative units, and then create a separate use policy for the readers in that situation.
Thank you. Is that a friendly amendment then to Board Member Calavitas, or was that a separate?
No, I'm just giving my thoughts on it. I'm not sure how that could be conveyed, or if even if other people agree with it.
Sorry, I don't think there's a motion.
Oh, that's correct. There's no motion out yet. Okay, so that's a helpful clarification, Board Member Ramsey. I think we should consider that when we craft the motion. Thank you. And then the next person is Board Member Owens.
So thank you to Board Member Calavita for providing the historical information that the purchase of the ALPRs for parking enforcement was only for parking enforcement. And because of that information, I would support Councilmember Harrison's proposal. I also support what Board Member Ramsey said, that if the police department wants to pursue a separate ALPR, purchase of a separate ALPR unit for investigative purposes, that's something that they should bring forward to council potentially. But since this ALPR unit was purchased only for parking, I am on board with supporting Councilmember Harrison's proposal.
Thank you. And then we have Board Member Leftwich and Board Member Levine.
just going to echo what Board Member Owen said and Board Member Ramsey. I like that approach because I think it is rather nuanced. So I like the idea of supporting Councilmember Harris's version with the recommendation that the department come back with a separate use policy.
Thank you. Board Member Levine.
Yes, I would suggest not inviting additional requests. I'm very confident if the police want something, they will ask for it and most likely get it. I think right now we should keep things simple, and the choice is really between these two proposals. And for all the reasons Board Member Calavita very clearly illustrated through the history and the status, we should go. I'm in favor of and support Harrison's proposal and Board Member Calavita's recommendation.
Thank you. There's important reflection on simplicity here. Board Member Calavita.
Yes, I would. I very much agree with Board Member Levine, and I particularly think that it would be a mistake for us to invite such a request from the police department. I agree that if they want this, then that's what they will do. And I have reason to believe that this is forthcoming in any case. We do not need to invite it. This is through the grapevine, I hear coming down the line. So I would really suggest that we don't include that as part of our recommendation. It makes it sound like this is what we would prefer to have. And I have heard people voice privacy concerns. I wouldn't cloud this with an invitation to the department to put forward something broader.
Great, thank you. And we should move towards a motion, but Board Member Owens.
Well, I'm moving toward the motion right now. So I'm going to make the motion that we accept Councilmember Harrison's proposal.
Thank you.
In that motion?
Board Member Moore has seconded, I believe. Board Member Levine and Board Member Calavita, do you have your hands raised? Board Member Calavita.
I'm actually wondering if we want to include these two minor additions that Council Member Taplin included, number 2 and number 5 on his list at the beginning of his proposal, or just leave it at that.
Can you go over that really quickly so we can perhaps amend the motion?
I think it's simpler just to yeah. I think we'll just, yeah.
Okay, motion that stands first raised by Board Member Owens, and then I thought it was Board Member Moore who seconded. So
Yeah.
Are there any objections?
I just quickly wanted to, what were the two, just because Terry Taplin had appointed me today to fill in for Regina Harris. So I just wanted to give what number 2, and you mentioned 2 parts of his proposal, a fair shake.
On page 23, number 2, he's added pursuant to BPD General Order B26. It doesn't add much. It just is a clarification, I suppose. And I'm sorry to say I didn't look up General Order P26. It has to do with not harassing or intimidating any individual.
Okay.
And on page on page 25, C in the middle, he's added something there. Actually, I think that we should not do this, because if you will look, if you have the front page of Taplin's proposal, you see the list 1 through 5 at the beginning.
Yeah, the numbers on mine are off.
Yes. So number 5 says amend section 1302.4, but in fact, it's 0.5. And therefore, it's very complicated. I think it's not worth, do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
In his list, he says 0.4, but in fact, he's referring to 0.5. And since it's a minor issue, I don't think it's worth fooling with.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then Director Lee has her hand up.
Yes, I believe Board Member Owen's motion was to accept, and I think support would be the better word. Because we're not being asked to accept this. We're telling the council we like Councilmember Harrison's.
That's a good clarification. We don't have the authority to accept this. If you could clarify that.
I'm comfortable with that change.
Okay.
Okay.
And then it's seconded by.
Second the change.
Okay, great. And then do we need to do a roster
Yes, a roll call vote.
call vote? Thanks.
Okay, on the motion to support Councilmember Harrison's proposed changes to the ALPR use policy. Calavita?
Yes, but is there any reason to articulate here that this is what we already endorsed at a previous meeting?
Oh.
I mean, this is the same thing we supported in the past.
Right.
So I don't know. I think.
I see what you're saying, because you supported it and then I brought it back because you had.
Because there was an alternative.
You didn't have the.
And so however you want to phrase it, Director Lee, I'm confident that you will do that.
Can't we say continue to support?
Right.
That the board continues to support.
Yes, excellent.
Great.
Okay.
You support via this motion.
Support Councilmember Harrison's.
And then I voted yes.
Okay. Chang?
Yes.
Leftwich?
Yes.
Levine?
Yes.
Mizell?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Owens?
Yes.
Ramsey?
Yes.
And Batista?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Before we leave this topic, so do you, I'm sorry, I should have had somebody amend it, but let's do a separate motion, which you could do by consensus with, which is, and this will be 2 parts. Could somebody please move to authorize 2 things? One is for maybe Board Member Calavita and I to work on a letter to the council expressing the support, and for the chair or whoever you want to designate to speak at the meeting, if you want to do that.
To speak at what meeting?
At the meeting when it's voted on. I think March 22nd, the council meeting.
Oh.
It's up to you. You could also authorize something and then somebody and make it optional, just in case. So.
I move that we authorize Chair Chang to speak to this, if requested by the council.
And that you'll work with the director to.
And that I'll work with the director. Yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay. Chair, can you ask if there's any objection to any of that?
Yes. Are there any objections? I do see Board Member Levine's hand is up, but
No, I'm sorry.
Pause before. Great.
No objection.
Thank you. Any objections to that motion? Not seeing or hearing any. Shall we do another roll call?
No, that was, we could consider it passed by general consent.
Okay, passed by general consent. Great. And just want to do a time check. We're at 2 hours. So just bearing that in mind, try to move efficiently. Moving on to C, with forming a subcommittee to assist with the preparation of a PAB budget proposal.
Chair,
Okay.
may I just interrupt? I'm under the weather, and so I'm going to have to leave the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. I hope you feel better.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, Kitty.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Feel
So
better.
Board Member Calavita has left.
Okay, quickly, at your last meeting, 3 people expressed interest and were appointed to this a budget proposal subcommittee.
Oh, that's right.
Nowhere in the recording could I find that you actually voted to form the subcommittee. So
Okay.
that's why this is being re-agendized. You talked about it. Everybody thought it was a good idea, but you actually did not take the appropriate
Okay.
action.
Thanks for catching that. So do I need to ask someone to
Make a
ask a motion to form the subcommittee?
I
can
take
someone-
that motion.
Great. Thank you.
I
That
would-
was Board Member Levine. Does someone second that?
Second it.
And Board Member Leftwich seconds it. Any objections? Does this require a roll call?
No.
No, general consensus.
Can I note one thing, though, that the list of subcommittee members has me listed on the budget committee that's pending. And actually, it was board members Owens, Levine, and Harris.
Owens, Levine, and let me look at the right list.
Owens, Levine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's my recollection as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you can move on.
Great. All righty. So so we have Owens, Levine, and Harris, and we have the subcommittee formed. And 9D, Lexipol policies. Do you have an update on the status?
I have no further update. There was a question about the number of policies that the department said had not been presented to us, which I thought was a pretty high number. And now I realize that it's not just policies we'd never seen before, but also policies that we had looked at, had been put in place, and then since been modified that have not gone through our process. So that's how they got to 36. I'm still working with the department to figure out exactly, to identify exactly which policies there are. So that is all I have to report tonight. And I leave it to you whether you think you want to form another subcommittee at this point. Personally, I think everybody is pretty maxed out, but
Yeah, we were looking at the priorities of getting the PAB off the ground, but I do want to follow up with a quick question here, and then Board Member Leftwich has a question. When you say it was modified, can you remind us what type of process that went through?
by modified, that I mean that policies had gone through us and then been put into place by the department. After that, there could be a variety of reasons, change in law, whatever. The policy the department wants to change the policy.
Or it has
Right.
proposed.
Right. See, I've been tracking what went through the PRC previously.
Okay.
And then I've come up with a number that we had never received, according to my records, maybe 14 that we have not yet received from the department. And they were telling me, the department was telling me, oh, there's 36 that we've been refraining from giving to you pending your formation of a subcommittee. So that's what I was trying to figure out. And now I realize it wasn't just policies we've never seen, but policies that have been revised since we last saw them. Now, in addition to that, there are about 39 that we did get from the department that the PRC never did get to. So there's quite a bit of work.
Okay, that's something to bear in mind with regard to forming a subcommittee now. Board Member Leftwich?
Well, I was concerned about this because during the time of the PRC, the department wouldn't finalize the policy, transition from a BPD policy to a Lexipol policy without us working with us. And it was a joint process. And so now it sounds like they're way ahead of us. And so that worries me because these are now final policies that we haven't had input in. And my experience with Lexipol is that the Lexipol policies are, Berkeley policies are pretty progressive traditionally, and Lexipol policies aren't. And so often when we would look at them transitioning, the old Berkeley policies were better actually. So we would be inserting new language in the Lexipol policies to make them more consistent with Berkeley's practice and then try to make them, even more progressive. And we worked closely with the department and it was a good working relationship, I thought. So I was concerned to hear that we are so far behind. And then I remember in a memo that was in our packet from the chief at our last meeting, there was something about her being willing to slow down until we could catch up or something. I forget what the language was. So I know we've got to get our regs done first, but I'm concerned that we're way behind and that the department has gone full speed ahead without us.
Thank you, Board Member Levine. You're on mute, Board Member Levine.
I'm sorry, I was trying to find this article, which I read, that's in this month's Esquire magazine. It's a history of Lexipol's formation and the attorney who put this company together. And it's very interesting and informative, and I'll forward it to the director to disseminate. I'm sorry I didn't do that before, but I will do that. I think it's extremely educational. Everybody should read it.
Okay.
There was a law review article that I had circulated several years ago to the members of the PRC, and I'll distribute that to the PAB members. Maybe I'll just distribute it again in case other people forgot about it, but it was very informative. I think it just means that that warrants, the whole history of the company warrants this body taking a very close look at the Lexipol policies. And for the newer people, I do want to point out that the first couple dozen policies that the PRC approved consisted of basically BPD general orders that were wholesale simply put into the Lexipol format. So there was, there were, again, a couple dozen at least policies that the department viewed as being very specific to Berkeley and not really amenable to the Lexipol model, because they do have their templates and their models. So.
Yeah, thank you. As those folks know now, that Lexipol has off-the-shelf policies. So do you think we should create the subcommittee but not staff it right now, given some of the concerns, or just wait until what do you think, Director Lee?
My personal recommendation is that you should wait, but it's the board's decision. To me, having yet another subcommittee on the list and with people having their names on it, if I were a board member and I saw how many times my name appeared on that list,
sure,
I think that would make me more stressed out than less.
Okay.
And if the if the subcommittee's not able to meet right now anyway, I would say.
We'll do it later. I think that's probably right. Board Member Owens?
Just have a comment about, because hopefully we'll be able to have a process in place to add public members to subcommittees. So I'm wondering if we should establish the subcommittee only so we can kind of have that out there for the public members, that when we already have public members that express an interest. Because we're talking about having a formalized process for community members to participate. So I'm just thinking, because we know we're going to establish a subcommittee, maybe we do, just so the community knows what potential subcommittees are coming up, and we can already get those that are interested in it, saying whenever you guys decide to meet and you have a subcommittee, we already have community members ready to go. That's just a suggestion.
I see. And then March 8th, Director Lee, is when it goes before the City Council with regard to public members.
The standing rules, yes.
Yeah, it was March 8th. Okay.
But then there's still going to be, this office has to work on the whole publicizing piece of it.
Okay, there's still a couple of steps. So, I'm okay with either. I do understand, though, that we have a lot on our plate right now, but it is a pressing issue. So, Board Member Owens, would this be a motion then? Excuse me, a motion then, Director Lee, if Board Member Owens were to suggest just to create the subcommittee now?
Yeah, you do need a motion to create the subcommittee.
So, are you inclined to do so?
I'm comfortable with not doing it. I'm just trying to make sure that we kind of, if we decide not to set up a subcommittee now, I just want to have a process already in place that community members know that we will have a subcommittee, and that they, once this process, we define the process for community members to submit their application or whatever, then they know that this is a subcommittee coming up, and they can already put in their request to be part of that subcommittee. So that's the only reason why I'm saying it. I recognize that we're not ready to go there, but it would be nice that when we are ready to put members of the board on the subcommittee, we already have the community members identified that will be part of the subcommittee. That's the only reason why I suggested it.
Okay, so then that process will be triggered after presumably March 8th, and then when the staff have time to then do the publication process, which I know they're overloaded with their docket and other administrative duties. So that's something to bear in mind. I don't know that we can set a time frame, but we can kind of say, here, this is a public meeting, that's our plan, and we're planning to get to it as soon as we can, starting after March 8th. I don't know if that means like April or May or June, but
I hope before June.
Right.
The publicity, the publicity from this office inviting people to apply can include mention of an upcoming subcommittee on Lexipol policies. So that's one way to get it out to people.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Thanks, staff, for managing that. So we're now on to new business. Is there anything else with Lexipol policies? No, so we're at 9:10, new business. So 10A.
Yes, 10A, to consider ways to contribute to the hiring and selection of the permanent director of police accountability, the DPA investigator. I know Board Member Levine, honestly, I was there at the meeting where we had this discussion. If you want to lead off on this item.
Yes, I will. I was going to also report on our update on our meeting, which is, I think, important to take in as part of this consideration. We did meet last week, the Director Search Subcommittee, and had some difficulty kind of figuring out what we needed to do to assist in this process. And really, what the problem is that we're having difficulty getting any communication from the either the city or from Brett Byers in terms of creating this brochure that describes the position of director. And so I contacted through email Brett Byers, and she replied that really I needed to, or we needed to talk to the people in the city who, Latanya Bello, so she was copied on this email. They're the ones who are contracting with this organization, Byers Group, the headhunters. So we have to talk to them. I didn't hear back from Ms. Bello, so I called and left a phone message and today. So I'm hoping to communicate with her, but we were really kind of grappling. We came up with, we did some effective brainstorming in terms of organizations and contacts, but we didn't have a good job description. It helped when Director Lee was able to give me, which I suppose I should have been able to figure out, that it was there was a description on the city website for the position that she holds. And I also was able to get, we want a timeline because sort of like what's happening needs to happen promptly because Director Lee is going to leave. She's leaving at the end of June, she informed me. So, you know, that's not, it's not tomorrow, but it's soon. So that's what's happening. My concern, to add on this question of the investigator, is how are we going to look toward the future of this board? And that brought up my concern for being on the budget committee, so that we have the money, the power, investigators, you know, Board member Mizell talked about issuing subpoenas for body-worn cameras if we need it, but, you know, that's not something you just do with the drop of a hat. I don't even think there are subpoenas that are suitable for our use yet. We were just given that ability. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of defining what the director's going to do, how the director's going to interact with the board. Does the board have any say with the hiring of an investigator? All these cases that were referred, the complaints, now we're working out the regulations. They're controversial. We've had some setbacks. Time, you know, moves forward. We have hearings. I'm still learning, but I see some things that make me concerned about the future and how we're going to how the director and his or her staff are going to be able to interact with this board in a way that is effective. So I think, you know, I'm opening up sort of a can of worms here without giving a particular recommendation, except I think that the board needs an investigator. We need to participate in the investigative stage. I think that was what we were granted in the charter amendment, and the way it works now, and I think this is how the PRC worked, the director didn't exist, but the staff who were employed by the city investigated, brought it to the PRC, and they had a hearing, but it was just with what they were given that the PRC hearing boards, the three member boards were allowed to make decisions. So where do subpoenas come in? How do you subpoena if you don't have investigators answering questions that you want, the board members or the hearing officers? I think there's just a lot of questions about the new structure that need to be addressed. And part of that really is, the first part is to define the roles of these various employees of the city who are in the department headed by the director. So, and I think we need more people, more help for the director, more help for the investigator, and more direct participation by board members in the investigative process. So I throw that out for further suggestions and discussion.
Thank you, board member. I know we share many of those same concerns. Director Lee, do you have something?
Yes, a few things. I just want to make clear to everybody, you know, I am under a contract with the city council. My current contract, I was under an initial contract from last July 1st to December 31st of last year. My contract was renewed, and it's from January 1st to June 30th of this year. And so that is why I'm leaving, because my contract will be up, but also because it had been my intent for some time to retire. So that's my plan. The hiring of staff is set forth in the charter, and I think it's pretty clear that the director is hired by the council, and that the director then hires subordinate staff. And so, I just don't think that there's any question about how that works in accordance with the charter. I will say that this has been a learning process for staff, as well as the board, as well as the police department, as well as the city manager's office and the Berkeley Police Association. This is a whole new ball of wax. There are so many aspects to it. And it's some of it's quite frankly a little painful, but these are the growing pains of a new agency. And I finally have learned to accept that. So it's not, I don't think that the way that one might feel, this discomfort or this frustration, I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's normal, and it's just the fact of having this new agency and its new powers. Sometimes the charter isn't very clear on some things, and we can all point to section 18I as one that people do not agree on, but board members don't agree on it, staff doesn't agree with it, the union doesn't agree with us, and so there's a lot going on, and I want to acknowledge that and acknowledge people's frustration, because I share that as well. And the last thing I want to talk about is the investigations, which to me, the charter is also fairly clear. Reading 14F, upon a receipt of a complaint by the Police Accountability Board, the Director of Police Accountability shall ensure a timely, thorough, complete, objective, and fair investigation into the complaint. And then in H, it says the DPA shall present the results of their investigative findings and recommendations to the Police Accountability Board, who shall make a recommendation to the Chief of Police regarding the complaint. And then 18, I won't go through section 18, but 18 basically also supports that role for staff in conducting the investigation. So that is what I have to say.
Thank you. Board Member Lethbridge.
Well, I know I had raised that issue in our meeting yesterday. I'm in a PAB time warp now for all our meetings, but and I know it's a meaty issue. I think it's an important issue. And once again, I think that the drafters of the charter amendment did not think through all the possible scenarios, and there's so much ambiguity there. In any event, I know the regulation subcommittee is going to talk about that issue, about whether the board has any investigative powers, and then we'll bring it back to the full board. And so that's coming up. But I raised my hand just because I'm worried about the timing. Is there an expectation that a new director will be on board by June 30th?
I certainly hope so.
But does that seem feasible given, I mean, it sounds to me like we are so early in the stage still, but
I agree.
It's been part of the problem is that we're not working cooperatively. I mean, it's not necessarily nefarious. It's just, communication's not real good. It's not fluid between the headhunters and the city and the city council, or we weren't referred to the city council. We referred to the interim deputy city manager. So, it's a little concerning because to get a good sampling, a good set of candidates, which is what we want, we need a brochure and we need some action, and we want to have input. That's why we created this subcommittee.
Director Lee, is that a drop dead date for you? If the city came to you and said, well, could you extend your contract one more time? Is that something that you're considering at all, or are you definitely done on June 30th?
My public position is that I'm not working any longer than June 30th of this year.
I like the adjective public position. I'm going to hold on to that.
Well, I would hope that would light a fire under the powers that be.
Yeah.
I mean, if I say I'll hang around as long as you need me, it's not going to get any faster. So I've made it clear to the buyers.
That's right.
I've made clear to the buyers group what my intentions are. So.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe it's Board Member Moore.
Thank you. Just a couple of things that I wanted to reiterate about this search is that we are not a focal point or a artery of this search. We are a side piece. We are something that they want our input, but they don't want our participation in the process. And so we have to acknowledge that this is where we are. We don't know how far they are in the process. It's a need to know basis thing. And just our subcommittee was created because they asked us to, but they don't feel like we need to know. So I'm just going to leave that there.
Thank you. Board Member Batista.
Yes, hi. I know that we mentioned a brochure. I'm just curious how if we're targeting social media channels, like if you float around the job announcement. I mean, I'm happy to post on LinkedIn, Facebook, but I feel like if we want like a large and diverse pool of candidates, like the social media channels, starting with LinkedIn, is like where this should be published.
Yeah, and Board Member, I think that's another one. I think the questions we have for the buyers group and potentially the city on how they're pushing this process forward. I think the biggest concern really is, who will be in these, obviously first the DPA position, but who will be the investigator for the board in the time. And if we're coming along to June 30th, where obviously we'll have Director Lee hopefully enjoying her retirement, having Investigator Norris enjoy his retirement, will we be able to function? I know full well, as someone who's chaired now, I guess for a year, a task force working with the city, the consultant, and then us as a board, it gets very difficult to organize between those three entities. And if any time someone goes down who's really important in one of those three pieces, things break down fast. And we can't, as I think we all agree, we can't afford that as a board, especially not with the responsibilities we have. So I'll just mention that. Board Member Owens.
So I too am concerned about timing, definitely about the director, but honestly, I'm really concerned about the investigator, because my understanding is Investigator Norris is leaving next month. That's right? And you know, we're fortunate that we have the director until the end of June, but we're looking at not having an investigator as of next month. So I'm really concerned about what's going on with the hiring of an investigator. I definitely share your concern about the director, but I'm really concerned about the investigator, because that's coming up faster than we think.
Mr. Vice Chair, can I respond to that?
Yes, please.
I should have reported that I reported at the last meeting that we had a position for temporary investigator open, and that has closed. And I hope by the end of this week, I'll get to see the applications. The questions have to be scored. And then once that list is given to me, I get to decide who to interview. So I would hope that, I hope I have somebody in place before Mr. Norris leaves.
Do you know how many applications that were received? And I know the number you receive is not necessarily the number that would get through the process.
Right.
Out of curiosity.
We received 16.
Okay.
So again, this is a temporary position, and then also in the works is, but not, it has obviously hasn't gone that as far, is to hire a permanent investigator. But I really want, it's going to be, one good thing is we're kind of reaching a little lull in the complaints, and I don't want to say that too loud because then they'll start rolling in. But number 6, the one that you looked at earlier, is the last one for a little bit, other than the 2 big death case investigations. So, sorry, I lost my train. Oh, so we fortunately are in a little bit of a lull, and I really want the new director to hire a new permanent investigator. I just think that makes the most sense. But I want to have things in place, so that I want the process to be started before I go, so that they're not starting from scratch to hire a permanent investigator, but they've got, at least the application process will be open, if not people vetted, the process closed and people vetted and ready to be lined up for interviews. So.
Yeah. No, that's definitely critical. And if I can ask Director Lee, we discussed in subcommittee, and I'm sure Board Member Levine will mention as well, writing some sort of letter to the effect of, first, we need more information more regularly about this process on the city's end. What progress is being made, and I think B, also ensuring, I know obviously we don't have a direct role in employment, obviously, but our role overall, and I guess at least understanding the components the city is considering in the process, how exactly they're conducting it and at what speed. Do you see that as helpful on your end in this process?
writing to ask specifically for that information?
Yes.
I think so. It doesn't have to be really formal, but if you wanted to do that, at least you have a record.
I have done that. That's what I did as representative from the subcommittee, the co-chair. So that's what I was waiting to hear back from the buyers group about: timeline, brochure creation, input on any drafts that have been created. I wrote that to Brett Byers, and that's when I got the reply that the city has contracted with us. We really can't discuss it with you. Contact Isabella. And that's what I did. And I don't have that back yet. We haven't communicated. So I'm making an effort, but perhaps it would be even better if you did or if we both did.
I was just going to say, let me see if I can get a hold of
Yeah, that'd be great.
My understanding as of last week or the week before, that the brochure was close to being done, which obviously is not true because now it's been a week or two. So I hope now that it really is close to being done. And for sure, each of you can have a role in helping to publicize through your various channels and networks. That would be absolutely appropriate and desirable.
I have a question. Is it possible for us to have some input about hiring of an investigator, us being the board? I know it's your responsibility, and I think it's smart to envision that the new director would want to hire a new investigator. But I guess what I'm trying to explore is the possibility that there isn't such a separation of powers between the director and the board in terms of investigation and fact-finding that goes into this 3-judge panel. It's a quasi-judicial function. That's what we're here essentially to do. We're trying to create an environment, rules, regulations that apply, and I'd like to see more coordination between the department and the board instead of being so separate in terms of asking the questions of the complainant, the witnesses, and creating a preliminary decision, which is, I don't know what you're like the grand jury. You come up with a preliminary recommendation that you bring to the board, and then we look at it and say yay or nay, and then, your preliminary decision is sometimes referenced potentially as, well, isn't that the decision? How come the board got to change it? I know this is all part of this growth process and defining, but I guess I'm pushing for more coordination between the board and the director and the staff. So we're more united. And this preliminary investigation is preliminary. It's like a grand jury. It's not a finding, it's a recommendation.
Yeah, I think you bring up fair points. I think the distinctions do get a bit muddy. I would say the director's position operates as a recommendation given our ability to override it. I know it's not quite phrased that way, but certainly we could look at those details more and have a longer discussion. In terms of this item, I'm inclined, and see if you agree with Board Member Levine, to allow Director Lee this opportunity to try to reach out to, I believe if she's still HR director, but Latanya Bello. Or no, sorry, now hold on.
Interim deputy.
Interim deputy state manager. Thank you. To get more information. I do have a positive work relationship with her, and hopefully we can get that. And if not, we can come back at our next meeting and potentially have a discussion about more formal options if needed. Does that seem acceptable to you? Okay.
Yes.
Anything else on this item right now, folks? Okay.
So it sounds like you want to leave this on the agenda for next time?
Yeah, we can leave it, and hopefully we have a better idea by then. Yeah. Okay, thanks, folks.
Okay.
Thank you for that conversation, and Vice Chair Mizell. Can we discuss 10B now, review policy 319, and just a time check, it is 9:37.
Chair, I don't know about you. I'm pretty tired. I just want to remind the public that this board and staff had a 5 o'clock meeting in closed session. And so we have been working, we did get a break, but we did start at 5 tonight. And if it's okay with you, I just assume put this off.
Yeah, let's do that. Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Great. So then we'll go to item 11, to public comment. Does anyone, public member would like to speak?
Yes. First one is Emily R.
Okay, so hopefully you can see the timer now.
Yes.
Emily R, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I do see the timer. I'm sorry if this came up and I missed it, but some of you may know this already, but I'm sorry. At the council meeting last night, the city manager gave a report out about, several items, reimagining and the police chief search and the director. And what they said about the director search was they were planning to have the recruitment profile done by this Friday. And for review, I don't know if that's just for council review or whose review, but then they said they were planning to advertise to the public by March 14th. So that was the timeline Dee gave last night. And then the other thing I just sort of wanted to comment, having listened about all the discussions around the ALPR items, it's just super confusing. I've heard all of you kind of struggling to make sense of how do these different pieces relate to each other? And so it got me looking at the council agendas, and essentially, what seems to be coming to council March 22nd is a pretty big package, which is still, it's the Surveillance Technology Act report that addresses different technologies, but then also council has already asked Dee to come back with the surveillance technology use policy for ALPR technology, which is, that's already in process. And so all of the discussion around sort of Councilmember Harrison's item, Terry's item, Councilmember Taplin's item, which are just sort of smaller pieces. I don't know. It just seems like they're these narrow pieces that are going to be within this larger use policy that may address a lot of the questions you've been raising. But it's like, when does that broader use policy come to all of you, if at all? There's questions of what sort of authority do you have over operational decisions? But regardless, it's just been it's been so much time spent on this sort of one Harrison item, when that's related to the, parking, focusing on parking stuff, when this whole broader use policy around ALPR technology is already in the works and supposed to be coming back in early 2022. I don't know if that will be ready for March or not, but I guess I just want to put that provide that context, because that seems like the bigger conversation that you may want to weigh in on. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Emily. Do we have another member of the public?
Yeah. Charles Clark.
Charles?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Director, and members of the board, I am Charles Clark.
Charles, I can't hear you right now. Can others hear him?
Sorry, my mistake, Charles.
Am I coming through now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple seconds before I start up again.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Madam Director, and members of the board, I am Charles Clark. I did not have an opportunity to visit the tail end of your closed session, and I wondered if you would be reporting out any results from that closed session. That's simply a question I should have asked at the top of this meeting. In regards to the items that you took up at this meeting, the ALPR item, you've made your decision about the drafts before you. I heard the phrase function creep. You should know that since the ALPRs were originally adopted for parking enforcement use, there have been a number of shootings, a great number of shootings in District 2, which the District 2 council member has responded to by saying, let's start looking at technological tools to assist law enforcement to handle that problem. So yes, you could claim function creep, but you should also imagine that there has been reality creep in District 2 at least, which may not have reached other districts, that's for sure. I don't know what the quality of the grapevine between District 2 and District 4, District 7 would be. But the fact is that when the facts change, the District 2 council member has offered amendments to the existing policy. So that seems to be where that's coming from. And as the as Emily Arm noted, there are items in the mill responding still further to that reality. Regarding Lexipol, it would be helpful to have a Berkeley specific history to augment the written accounts that you'll see in law reviews and other publications. The Berkeley Police Department put a policy sergeant on the task of adapting the vanilla Lexipol policies for 2 years before they even reached the PRC, which then appointed a subcommittee, and board member Ramsey would be very familiar with this, going through in painstaking detail the policies that are gone through, such that the policies that actually get implemented do not resemble the vanilla policies that Lexipol offers its subscribers. So when you read about how forgiving Lexipol is, be assured that the subcommittee, and before that, the police department, actually tilt things in the direction that Berkeley policy has traditionally taken. So I think that it would be useful to learn a little bit about what the PRC has done with Lexipol before making conclusions from written articles. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Looking to see if there's another member of the public who is raising their hand.
Yes, Kit Saganor.
Kit?
Thank you very much for taking my call. I appreciate the work you're doing. In regards to the ALPR discussion that you had, there are a couple more aspects to that, which may be somewhat beyond the scope of the PAB, but I think they're worth bringing up in the context. One is that in terms of the privacy issues, ALPR, if Berkeley adopts it, or whatever ALPR does in this, is not Berkeley's taking on data and holding data. These are contracts with exterior for-profit companies. So it's not really clear that in terms of the privacy and security issues, that the company that is entrusted with the data, there are incentives to that company to not keep that data as private as they're supposed to. And it's not clear that there will be incentives built into it, or rather punishments that would be provided were the company to fail in the privacy issues. So that's one of the concerns that I know that I have. I believe that board member Calvita spoke about the issue of it has not been that effective for certain types of crime that have been of great concern to folks in Berkeley, such as catalytic converter theft and things of that nature. I'll just mention a reason why ALPRs are actually not all that effective. They read license plates, and people who are, basically career criminals, people who are going out stealing catalytic converters, do two things that make this not very helpful. They steal cars and commit crimes using a stolen car. So knowing what the car was tells you, oh, it was done with this stolen car, but you don't know who was in the car. Or something else that is done is that they swap license plates so that the vehicle that they're in has a license plate that belongs to some other vehicle. And that one, it doesn't get often reported so quickly because the people will notice when they come out in their morning that their car has been stolen, although the crime has probably already been committed, but they often will not notice that they have a different license plate now on their car and not their own one, so they don't report it as missing. And the other issue that's really beyond your scope has to do with how expensive these companies' contracts are, so that in terms of how effective this is, you really need to look at cost effectiveness. And it's a very expensive proposition to have lots of ALPR cameras around the city. It's not very clear that it will really return very much in terms of real crime prevention and apprehension. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Aguilar.
Mr. Beekman.
Mr. Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for the meeting tonight, for my first PAB meeting. I'll be really sad that Catherine Lee will be leaving in June. She offered some incredibly interesting advice tonight on the concept of there's a possibility that we can ask for body camera footage in terms of if it's a criminal investigation as opposed to actually being within the criminal trial procedure process. That's an important distinction and a really interesting one. And it's those sort of interesting facts and clarity that I think we'll all really miss Catherine Lee when she goes. She's been part of the PRC for a long time, or the Police Review Board, I guess, Police Review Commission. And yeah, she'll be really missed. So thanks for all her work. A few other points. Thank you for the public comment from the first speaker. She really worked to clarify the ALPR issue and the differences that I hope the PAB can eventually weigh in on. As I said at beginning public comment, it's a very interesting concept to me that as a Berkeley community, we can work towards a more progressive Lexipol agenda in the future with a subcommittee process. I hope we can do the same with, technology accountability and have the same sort of subcommittee process that can really define how exactly the features of ALPRs will be working in the city. And if there's questions, they can come to the PAB and the subcommittee process to really clarify the situation. And that is the purpose of our technology future, is to make it a shared community process. It isn't dictates from government. It's a shared process in our future, which is the innovation. That is what is innovative about our future. It's not the technology itself, it's how community can become more involved in the process. So good luck in those efforts to do that. With my remaining time, I wanted to quickly ask, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but with the future of the subcommittee process, over the years, it's gone through a number of metamorphoses and changes. I think it's back to the idea that a person from outside of Berkeley can ask to be a part of the subcommittee process. And I just wanted to clear with that with yourselves right now. Is that still allowable? Is that still the legal definition of the Berkeley subcommittee process? And if used sparingly, I think it's a very important, helpful tool in how the Berkeley process can work. Thank you so much for your second public comment here that can allow ourselves to review the meeting process, and good luck on all your work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there, I'm looking at the attendees list. I don't see another member of the public.
No, I see no more raised hands, Chair.
Okay. Thank you for the comments. And, I do want to also say that, this is the first time I've heard that Director Lee was going to be leaving in June. That's upsetting to me in a number of ways, because she's absolutely critical to the PAB, and I think we all know that she's become a friend, and we really appreciate her efforts, and she has long-standing experience in that. I'm very concerned what's going to happen in June. I'm hopeful that there's some way for both her and Investigator Norris to proceed, at least for some time. They appear to me to be way too young to be retiring. I'm a little confused by that, but I am hopeful that we can figure something out, and we'll see. But regardless, I want to say thank you very much to both Director Lee and Investigator Norris, who's not here right now. But we appreciate all the efforts over the many years, and you certainly make this commission or PAB move along quite efficiently. Without your presence, I think it's going to be very hard, regardless of who is in director position or who is a new investigator. So that said, are there any other comments from board members or questions? No, so it's 9:53. So many of us have been at this since 5 o'clock. So shall we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Great, no objections. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night.